House, and joined by Lindsay Huddleston.
Hey there.
Sports psychology consultant, founder of Sports Psychology Solutions.
Yes.
What's the solution for Steve Kerr?
Just
get some healthy players.
You can stop injuries. They say, you got a great team if everyone stays healthy. And this is it right here.
How about not scoring 109 points in every game?
That's another point, too. I think that team was set up to be a great regular season team, and we saw that on a regular basis. But now when you talk about the arduous grind of playoff games that aren't just being sweeps, it's about health. And these guys have played, they've been living in the finals for the past 5 years.
Yeah,
that's
a lot of games.
Playing to June all the time, and that has a big impact.
Yeah. Well, when you think of explanations, excuses, we just talked about that with Michigan State last year in football. Is Golden State's injury epidemic to the point now where it's not an excuse, it's a legitimate explanation for what's happening?
Well, Jack, I heard you in your other segment say that earlier with those great bucket list items, by the way, too. I think it won't be an explanation for Golden State because they're so good. And they've gotten to that star status and that elite status that people almost root against them. So any other team, it may be a valid explanation, but nobody wants to hear that your Golden State team lost, even though KD didn't play, even though Clay didn't play. They don't want to hear that. They just want to say, down comes the empire, down comes the dynasty. That's one facet of it, I think.
People are either really rooting for Golden State. Stephen Brooks, he hates Toronto. He wants Golden State to win this. And not just because of Draymond Green. Or they are tired. They have Warriors fatigue.
Sure.
It's like the Patriots.
Sure.
Anybody but New England.
Yeah, I think we're seeing that. It's just crossed over sports. New England was so successful. They had those huge come behind, wins. And, I just think that's human nature, unfortunately. We like to see you win, but after we see you win too much, I think we'd rather see someone else win. Because it's kind of like, what is it that I'm not doing in my life to be that great, I think. People get to the point where they don't want to see it anymore.
All right. We want to welcome in a couple of very special guests. And when we talk about track and field, one of my favorite sports, a guy who has done probably more for youth track in this area than anyone, that is Robert Hollingsworth. And I can speak to this because my son was part of the club, the track club that competed in nationals and still has friendships based on that. Those were good times, but you've been doing this a long time, Robert.
Yeah, this will be my 40th year of coaching.
Wow. He's a mini O'Keefe, Jeff. 40 years. 40 years, and you're not retiring anytime soon, right?
No,
we're not going to let you
retire as long as I can get around.
No. What's the best part about coaching youth track and watching those athletes develop and mature like the guy sitting next to you?
Well, I think you said the right word, development. You have two types of coaches. You have coaches that like to get all the talent, they supervise it, organize it. Then you have coaches that know how to develop talent. And I think that's my passion is getting raw talent and developing it.
Do you want to do the introduction on Keshaun Harris?
Well, I remember when Keshaun came out and, right away, he had the gift, he had talent, and he ended up going to the Junior Olympics. And the Junior Olympics is a huge stage, very, very large stage. We had kids from all over the world there, and he made it in the 200 hurdles, and I could tell that he just felt really overwhelmed.
Did exactly what you taught him, right?
Yeah, but he was a little overwhelmed, but he's not overwhelmed now.
No. We're talking about the state champion, Division I, in the 110 high hurdles, in the 300 hurdles.
Indoor 60-meter hurdle champion.
Got that. Plus, he had a 110 championship a year ago that he defended. You had the 300 last year. 300, so you're back-to-back champ in the 300. And this year you added the 110s. Okay, got that straight.
And the gentleman that beat him the year that he took second is a great guy, alumni, Noah Carter, who's also at Michigan.
Okay. So you kind of got this thing covered here, Hollingsworth. Yeah. All right. Keshaun, congratulations on a tremendous career at Lansing Waverly, a three-sport athlete. We always like that. Somebody who was a very good football player, basketball player. Watched you last Tuesday night in the honor roll meet of champions, playmakers meet out at Michigan State. And unlike some athletes who chose to sit out to get ready for the state meet, you used it to sharpen the stone. And now you've got the Midwest Meet of Champions coming up. That's this Saturday.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
It's Saturday. They'll be having running the 110 hurdles. I think it's against Ohio and Indiana. So,
Yes.
It should be a good day.
Lindsay, what do you make of a guy like Keshaun who playing 3 sports, doesn't need a rest, just uses one to spin off from the other and making the most of every opportunity?
You know, if I didn't know him personally, which I've been fortunate to know him for several years, watching him as a basketball player, and that's one of his most underrated attributes. He's a serious ball player.
Yeah.
Serious. And I think that when you get to know him, his personality, his family, you see why. I think so many times people, and Coach Hollenworth knows this, you don't get to see the backstory on players and athletes. You see them at the point, at their pinnacle of success. But I've been fortunate being around the Waverly community to see him as a hardworking young man, quiet leadership, but always there. So I'm not surprised. I just think that other people need to realize that it doesn't just happen. It's just a work in progress over a lot of time, a lot of great people behind him. But he listens. He's a great young man. He'll do anything you ask him to do out there as an athlete to compete. And I'm just looking forward to seeing some success. No pressure, right? No pressure,
No
right?
pressure.
Some future success.
Keshaun, can you give us a career highlight, one moment above all others that stands out to you? Puts a smile on your face every time.
Last Saturday, I would say, one individual, saved me in 110 and 300. I feel like that's always been my ultimate goal. So, to achieve that goal, it was just crazy. It still feels unreal. It's happy.
Did that feel better than signing the letter of intent with the University of Michigan a couple days later?
Yeah, I would have to say that.
It did.
It was just, I've always wanted that. I always wanted to sign with a college too, but I think just winning both hurdles at the biggest stage, in my top part, it was unbelievable.
When we talked, you said, well, you weren't quite sure. It wasn't quite done. I said, I thought everything was done. You were going to be a Michigan Wolverine, but you mentioned Michigan State. You mentioned Central Michigan. Have you always wanted to be a Wolverine, and what locked that up for you?
Yeah, I've always wanted to be a Wolverine. Me and my family are actually Michigan fans, so once they were interested in me, it was kind of like, I want to go there. But I would have to say, going on campus and then the coach finally offered me, it was kind of, I think that kind of, set everything up. And,
Talking about the track coach.
Yeah.
So you'll be there on a track scholarship.
Yeah.
But now if you play football, it counts against football.
Yes, I also got offered a preferred walk-on spot on the football team. So.
Are you going to do that this fall?
Yeah, I'll be running track
So
here, but,
when do you report?
I actually have to report, at the end of June. I have to take some summer classes, and then, I'll work on the football team and start.
And what do you want to study?
Kinesiology.
Kinesiology. Okay. What do you think, Robert? Pretty good?
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah. Are you ready to go into this pressurized environment of Michigan football? And if you start winning Big Ten championships now, they'll say, well, it's just a matter of getting Keshaun Harris on campus.
Yeah, I think it'll be tough, but I've always been able to overcome tough situations. I'm kind of always stay focused. So I think it'll be good for me.
Okay. In terms of your track career, do you have aspirations to compete at the highest level? Could you eventually become an Olympic type hurdler?
Yes, I was always going to go, get to the Olympics if I can. But I've always wanted to run at the collegiate level. That's always been something I kind of dreamed of, either running NCAA championships. That's something I always wanted to do.
Where do you see Keshaun Harris throughout his college career, Robert? Is he destined for success at the next level?
Well, when I watch Keshaun play basketball, football, and run track, he reminds me of like a football player that doesn't know that it's okay to tackle. And when he realizes I can tackle, and that's how Keshaun reminds me. It's like this window comes open. It's like, wow, I can still do so. I don't think he's been tackled.
Yeah.
When I saw him play football,
A lot of talent.
I'm a track coach, but when I saw him play football, I was like, there's something there. Somebody's going to see that. So I really don't know which way he's going to go, because I think when they see the talent he has in football, his speed and his personality, I think he's going to become a leader right away, even as a freshman. I really can't tell you. I think he'll go either way.
What's your size now? Or what's your weight? What do you?
175, 11.
5'11", 175. Okay. If you put on another 20 pounds, Would it slow you down?
I don't know. I think I'll still be maybe even faster.
Some guys respond differently to weight training, and it slows them down a little bit. They get thicker, right, Robert?
Yeah, it definitely can affect your athleticism. I like more the plyometrics, but I know that the NFL. I was watching something on TV. The average weight of the NFL player is going down 20 pounds. They're looking for the leaner, lighter guy because their careers last long. They don't get as hurt as much.
That's right.
So they
Less stress on the joints.
I have a kid in Oregon. He's only 15-year-old, and Kansas State had invited him for a visit, and they told him he wants track also. They told him that we just want to let you know that we only look for wide receivers that can run a 49-second quarter.
Really?
Yes.
I like that. Instead of looking at how fast they are in a
That's
40.
That's the only area we look at. We watch athletic.net and those that play football and are wide receivers, they can run 49 quarters. Those are the wide receivers.
Okay, interesting. Lindsay, when you think about Keshaun, all he has accomplished, being a three-sport athlete, going on now with a college career ahead of him, what advice would you give him?
I would give him advice specific to his soon-to-be possible new head coach, Jim Harbaugh. I'm not taking anything away from your track experience. You got a great track mentor, but I remember having a conversation with Coach Harbaugh a year ago, and he talked about always having something left, especially going to spring, being able to compete. And I think you personally would be able to fare well in that environment, that every day there's a possibility for you to either lose a spot or gain a spot. And just knowing you personally, I think you'll fare well with that. I think you'll be able to put your blinders on and go in there as a serious, athlete and find out what's needed of you and not necessarily get caught in all the hype. And that would be my expectation. And we can say we talked about it here on the Drive with Jack first when he goes in there and blows people up and they won't be expecting to come. And that's my thought.
You can see Keshaun Harris run this Saturday at Michigan State. 1 o'clock, the running events start. And you get to see the best track athletes from Ohio, Indiana, and the state of Michigan. Looking forward to that. I know some of the people who are involved in that meet, and they've done a great job with it for a long time. You're going to have a great time there. Good luck to you in Ann Arbor.
Thank you.
We'll be following you very closely.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll be right back. Thank Robert Hollingsworth, Keshaun Harris, Lindsay Huddleston will be back. Walt Sork's going to join us toward the end of the show. It's a Drive with Jack, the Spotlight Radio Network.
Good job, man.